The Planted Runner is sponsored by Liquid IV. Instead of making New Year's resolutions, I like to focus on process goals, the little rituals that soon become habits. One of mine this year is making sure I'm hydrated before, during, and after every run. One of my favorite ways to hydrate is with Liquid IV. My current favorite flavor is pina colada, which also, by the way, makes a great mocktail any time of year. In each packet, you get 8 vitamins and nutrients, 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, and no artificial sweeteners. And it's non-GMO and, of course, vegan. Make Liquid IV your new ritual this year. Just one stick with 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code PLANTED at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code PLANTED at liquidiv.com. This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic. Most people think of January as a time for a fresh start with the new year. The gyms are crowded with newbies, and it seems like everyone's working on some way to have a new you in the new year. But if you're a marathoner, January means it's time to start training for your spring marathon. And by starting to train, I don't mean that you've just awoken from the holiday haze and your running shoes haven't seen socks in weeks. Hopefully you've kept up some fitness over the last couple of months, but it's perfectly fine and even recommended to have taken it a bit easier for a while. But in January, it's time to get serious if you're ready to have the best race this spring. So what exactly does that mean? Let's find out. Welcome to The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and my mission is to help you improve your running, your mindset, and your life with science-backed training and plant-based nutrition. Today, I'm beginning a new series taking you through each of the 3 months of specific marathon training. We are starting with month 3, which is perfect if you have an April race, but as you'll see, this is easily adapted to a May race or really any month of the year that's about 3 months away from your big day. You'll learn what you should be focusing on in your training this month, what your long runs, easy runs, and speed work should look like right now, and what you should not be doing 3 months before race day. This series is the perfect companion to your spring race training this year, so be sure to follow or subscribe to the show and make sure that you don't miss a single one. And don't forget your running buddies. This is the perfect time to share this episode with a marathoner in your life to make sure you both have the best training possible. Now, before we get into it, I'd like to announce that I'm bringing back something exciting, the return of the PR Training Lab. If you've been listening for a while, you'll remember that last season, I gave away 10 free custom training plans to runners just like you. Each winner was featured on an episode of the podcast where I explained exactly how I made their plan to get their dream goal. It was so successful and fun that I am bringing it back for spring racing season. If you would like to win a free custom training plan and be featured on a future episode, first, write a review of the show on Apple Podcasts. This is what helps the show grow and reach new runners. The next step to enter to win is to head to theplantedrunner.com/PRLab. I'll choose some lucky winners to get a completely free custom training plan that I make live right here on the Planted Runner podcast. Again, it's just 2 steps. Write an Apple Podcast review and then enter to win at theplantedrunner.com/PRLab. And with that, we're back to the show. But of course, don't forget to stay tuned all the way to the end of the episode for another Mental Strength Minute. Fortify your mind in 60 seconds or less. If you've got an April marathon on your calendar, you probably know that January is the time to begin training. But that actually might not be true for you. Sure, you can find people on the internet raw dogging a marathon with 0 training for reasons that I can't even fathom. You can find people doing all sorts of things and bragging about it on the internet. I'm not going to cover the extremes or, frankly, the stupid things that people do. What I prefer is to teach you how to run your first or your 50th marathon with the best training possible. You'll get to the starting line strong and be prepared for anything the 26.2 miles has to throw in your way. And that naturally means that your timeline to get to that starting line will be unique to you. January may be way too late to start training, or for some experienced runners, it'll be a bit too early to get into it. But most marathoners with at least a year or two of consistent running under their belt will want to start getting specific for the marathon 12 to 16 weeks ahead of race day. Now, if you're confused about when you should start, the best way to determine this is to get some expert help. And of course, I've got you covered no matter where you are in your journey. You can check out all the ways to level up your training this year at theplantedrunner.com, from custom training plans, the amazing community at the PR team, and more. I even have a few spots for one-on-one coaching left open, but this time of year, I fill up quickly. So be sure to get on board at theplantedrunner.com. For the sake of this episode, let's assume January is 3 months out from your race. I'm going to go over everything you should be doing and not doing this month so you can start your marathon cycle with the best chance of success. We are also going to assume that you've built a good, consistent running base at this point. What does that mean? Again, it will be different for every runner, but here's what I like to see from my marathoners at this point. Number one, you are running 4 days a week or more. Some people can get away with 3 days if they are aerobically cross-training with another sport on 1 or 2 days, but nothing is better for your training than consistent frequency of running. Number two, your long run should be about 12 to 14 miles or 20 to 22 kilometers at this point. If you're coming back from a break and you're experienced, you might be able to jump into higher miles sooner, but I consider this baseline for your long run. If you are not there yet, but you're maybe at 10 miles or 15K, it's not the end of the world. But I have to warn you that this is on the low end to complete the marathon well. Number three, your weekly mileage should be somewhere between 30 and 40 miles per week or 48 to 65 kilometers. Again, this is a generalization that might not fit your situation, but if you're only running 20 miles per week right now, building up to 26.2 is not going to be pretty. It can be done, but you're making it harder on yourself. Number four, at least one rest day and probably 2 for most people. Our bodies are built when we rest, not when we run. The more experienced and, honestly, the younger you are, the more quickly you will recover. Too much too soon is the number one way to not even make it to the starting line. So if you're doubting if you need to rest, you probably do. And of course, you'll want to be sure that you're eating well, sleeping well, taking time for strength and mobility, as well as learning how to fuel your runs before, during, and after. I've got a free guide on fueling your runs, so if you haven't gotten that yet, grab the download at theplantedrunner.com/join. That's theplantedrunner.com/join. All right, now that we've got the basics of where you ideally want to be in your training, even before you begin specific marathon training, let's get into the training itself. What exactly should your runs look like? What kind of speed work should you be doing? What about your long run, hill training, and everything else? I'll go over that when we come back. If you've been looking for another awesome running podcast to queue up after this one, let me recommend the Tread Lightly podcast with coaches Amanda Brooks and Laura Norris. What's great about it is these 2 seasoned coaches break down how they guide an athlete through different goals and challenges. And they're all about making running concepts easily digestible with data-driven insights, which I really appreciate, and I think you will too. Amanda and Laura make training accessible, inclusive, and fun, whether you are new to the sport or aiming to level up. Check out Tread Lightly today.
I don't know about you, but those heavy, ugly plastic jugs of laundry detergent make no sense to me. You're paying for mostly water, they take up a ton of room in your laundry room, and then you toss the huge plastic jug in the recycling. And did you know that 500 million of those bottles end up in landfills and oceans every single year? That's why I made the switch to Earth Breeze laundry sheets. They come in plastic-free packaging, take up almost no space, and you're not wasting your money paying for watery detergent. It's an easy way to get clean clothes without all that plastic waste. Get 40% off with your subscription at earthbreeze.com/plantedrunner. That's earthbreeze.com/plantedrunner.
Welcome back to The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic. When you're thinking about how to train 3 months out from your marathon, it can help to zoom out and look at the whole picture of what you're doing. Basically, your training should look like a funnel. It starts with a wide base of running that has a more generalized focus, which will narrow over the next 3 months to more specifically focus on the particular demands of the marathon as you get closer. And that means what you should not be doing in January is running marathon-paced workouts. Let me say that again. Do not run marathon-paced workouts right now. This is one of the hardest concepts for many runners to imagine. You're training for a marathon. Why shouldn't you be practicing the pace you'll be running at on marathon day? The answer is that it's too much too soon. You are not ready yet. That's like starting to run 20-mile long runs in January. Even if you have the fitness to do it, what will happen is that you will peak long before race day. You'll have nothing to build to. So you'll simply plateau, or even worse, you'll regress. Your long runs right now are simply about building a solid aerobic base, practicing your gear and your fueling, and not overly fatiguing you so that you can still knock out some fast speed work during the week. So what about that speed work? What does that look like right now? The best answer is that it can look like a lot of things right now, except marathon pace running. Now is the time to do some short, fast intervals or some 5K work to build stamina. Because when you sharpen up your high-end speed, when it's time to run slower but longer intervals closer to marathon pace, it will actually feel kind of easy. New and intermediate runners typically do best with only one session of speed work a week, while more advanced runners who run 5 days a week or more will probably want to add in a tempo-style run once a week, a couple of days after a day at the track. And of course, the rest of your running, the bread and plant-based butter of all aerobic training, is aerobic running. Embrace the jog to build that huge aerobic engine without burning out your legs for the rest of the week's training. If you're training for a hilly race, start incorporating rolling hills into your easy runs every week. If you're not used to running hills at all, try once a week. If you run them regularly, you can do most, if not all, of your easy runs on gentle hills, being careful to keep the effort easy. What about getting ready for unpredictable weather on race day or the mental demands of the marathon? My best answer is to get uncomfortable as often as you can. Run outside in the snow. Run inside on the treadmill in the heat. Forget about how fast you are running and the splits you're supposed to hit, and spend some time running in bad conditions, whatever that means to you. That way, when race day comes, anything that Mother Nature brings will not faze you because you have run through worse. One thing that will happen to you this month, whether you are brand new to marathoning or if you're an elite runner, is that you'll have doubts. It happens to all of us, and I would argue it's actually part of the reason why we do this sport. We will doubt that we can run that pace for that distance. We will look at the training to come and wonder if we can fit it all in. We will have a workout that doesn't go well, and we will doubt that this is even a good idea in the first place. There is inherent uncertainty in marathon training because we put so much of our lives into training for something for one day in the future. What if everything goes wrong? Oh, but what if everything goes right? It's nearly impossible not to indulge in the what ifs at times, but I promise that too much of that kind of thinking will just drive you mad. I find that a better way is to make those big goals, hold on to them loosely, and then focus on the plan of action that will get you there. In February, I will be back with the next installment of the 3-month marathon series, so be sure that you follow the show wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss it. And now it's time for the Mental Strength Minute. Fortify your mind in 60 seconds or less. Today's topic is use your breath. If you've ever tried meditation, you know it can be helpful to focus on your breath. Deep, slow breathing not only relaxes you, but it can be a technique to shift your focus when intrusive thoughts arise. This is absolutely true with your running as well, and it can even provide another effect: increased lung capacity and more oxygen delivery. The next time you're out for a run, whether it's fast or slow, focus on taking full, deep inhales for a few minutes at a time. On a slow run, this can be simply an exercise to build the habit, but on a faster run, this can be a powerful distraction tool. When you are starting to stress about the high effort, focus on a deep breath that takes at least 2 or 3 steps, and then exhale. The shift in focus and the extra oxygen will soon make running easier and more relaxed. Thank you for listening to The Planted Runner, part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Don't forget that you can enter to win a free custom training plan for your next race and get featured on the show. Just write an Apple Podcast review and enter at theplantedrunner.com/PRLab. Of course, reviews are the #1 way to boost this show's reach, and it's a great way to tell me what you'd like to hear next because I read every single one. Have a great run today.
Hear Her Sports is a podcast for everyone who loves stories by and about women striving to improve and make a difference in their lives. I am your host, Elizabeth Emery, a former professional cyclist. In every episode, I introduce a female athlete or woman in the business of sport through a thoughtful conversation about who they are and the terrific work they're doing. My guests and I explore the glorious and frustrating issues in sports, history, equity, training, nutrition, and so much more. Join us for inspiration, for community, and for love of being a strong, athletic woman.